But to start off with introductions, I'll begin. My name is Alana. I'm a producer at Sledgehammer Games. I am, sorry, I just realized it was talking to me on the other screen. I've been here for about 18 months. I'm bi, I'm very proudly bi and loud and proud about it at work and in my personal life, which is nice. It's something that kind of took me a bit of time to get to, but now that I'm there, I feel like it's a really important part of who I am and an important part of the work that I do. So yeah, that's kind of me. And I'm mostly here today just to moderate the conversation, so ask questions and keep things moving. And we have these beautiful people who will be here kind of doing the most of the talking. So hopefully this is the most words I will say all at once for this entire hour. But yes, I'll bounce it across to Andy, since you probably already heard his voice at the beginning. He can introduce himself.
Hello, I'm Andy Wilson. I'm the COO at Sledgehammer, which is an Activision studio, obviously, and the sponsor of this, one of the sponsors of this live stream. I've been with Sledgehammer for 2 years this month, actually, which is kind of crazy to say, because well over a year of that has been working from an office under the stairs in my spare room, which is not how I saw my first year and whatever at Sledgehammer going, but whatever, it's working, so who cares. I'm a he married to a he. I've been that way for about 10 years, and I've been in the games industry for about 16. So for me personally, when I actually got into games, it was very, very intentional to be very visibly, publicly out from the beginning, because in my previous life before that, after I graduated, working in investment banking, which was far from thrilling, I was the opposite. I was very, very kind of afraid to ever raise it. So I made a very, very conscious decision to be very open and direct about it when I moved into the games industry, and use that as a bit of a life reset. And it's been that way ever since. So that's me.
I'll keep introducing people because otherwise no one will know who to talk. Adrian, do you want to let us know who you are?
Hello, thank you all for joining us today. My name is Adrian Letta. My pronouns are he, him. I'm one of the co-founders for Activision's LGBT+ and Allies Employee Network. I've been a programmer, designer on several of the games from Guitar Hero to Skylanders to Spyro to Crash Bandicoot and Call of Duty. I also am interested in accessibility, to making sure our games are inclusive for gamers of all abilities. And I am a gay man. And part of this is that I'm so excited to be who I am, because gaming is an expression of just the amazing tapestry of what the human experience is. So for us to be here and to talk about gaming and to be ourselves and to celebrate who we are about that and to openly talk and share that discussion, that's really cool that we can do that. So thank you all for the opportunity for this.
Thank you for joining us. Cool. Belinda, my fellow bi, would you like to tell us about you?
Yes, absolutely. I'm Belinda Garcia. I'm an associate narrative designer at Sledgehammer Games with the lovely Alana and Ray and Andy. I am bi. It also took me a little while to get here, but as in the last couple years, I've been very proudly and out bi. But yeah, I've been at Sledgehammer for, I think, 4 months now. It doesn't feel like 4 months, it feels like forever. But yeah, super happy to be here.
She means that in a good way.
Yeah, in a very, very, very good way. The greatest way possible. I promise.
Awesome. Thank you. And Joe?
I'm Joseph Cochran, Joe. I am a senior software engineer for Blizzard. I work on World of Warcraft. Been working on World of Warcraft since about a year after it launched. I moved into the game industry and knew that I was going to move into the game industry and be out from the beginning. And so it's been really nice to be able to do that, especially as a software engineer. I think people mostly care that you can do the coding, so that helps. But one of the things I realized at Blizzard some years ago was that not everyone had that position of privilege. And so especially around 2014, when some of the conversations came up at Blizzard, we started talking about how people felt about being at work and being out at work. And we really wanted to just kind of get together, band together, and form our Blizzard network to try and help people be more comfortable at work and try and help the company kind of understand how to embrace everybody. This has been a great journey to be on. It's been fun to work on World of Warcraft, and it's been amazing to work with the D&I community at Blizzard. And now in the past couple of years, we've also been working more with Adrian and everyone at Activision. And it's been fantastic. It's just been so much fun to see how much people are willing to embrace diversity these days and are willing to let people be who they are and understand that that's important and valuable. So.
Awesome. And Ray.
Hey, I'm Ray. I'm a core engineer at Sledgehammer Games in Melbourne. I actually work remote from Sydney, so I don't often get to see any of my workmates except for on little screens like this, which is a shame, but hopefully I'll get to see them more often in the future.
At the moment with COVID,
yeah.
I don't get to see any of them in person anyway, as well.
Yeah, I've only been at Sledgehammer for about 8 months now, and I've actually only been out as trans for about 9 months now. Like, it took quite a while for me to sort of come to terms with things, and probably didn't even start thinking about it till about 10 years ago. And for some perspective, I've been in the industry for 15 years now, but I've never actually seen it as the industry's never been something that's prevented me from sort of coming out. I've always known plenty of like trans, queer, gay, bi, etc. friends within the industry, so they've always been visible. But it's actually good to start seeing like some studios really sort of embracing it and accepting that we're all here.
Awesome. Thank you, Ray. Cool. So we have kind of a bunch of our own questions that we're going to kind of bounce around and talk about, but we're also open to any questions that come through chat throughout. It's not like I'll talk at the beginning and then Q&A at the end or anything, really. Like if you have questions, we can kind of bounce around whenever. But to start with, a couple of us mentioned the LGBTQ employee network, and that's kind of also on the co-hosting of this panel. I'd really love, especially Adrian, who helped co-found that, if we could give a little info about kind of what that is and what that does for our employees and why it matters. That'd be awesome.
So with the employee network in particular, one powerful aspect about that is allyship. One challenging experience for a lot of people within the LGBT plus community is finding other people like ourselves, and maybe even more challenging can be finding people who are supportive of this community. And often that's kind of a silent identity. Sometimes it's not something that can be really understood unless you get to start to know a person or really get to have conversations with them. But the reality is that diversity, and for people as a whole, the togetherness happens once we start to talk to each other, to know each other, to understand each other. Because I guarantee you, the things that we are afraid of or that we fear or that we feel are different are really not that different when we get to know them. And that is kind of the power of these employee networks. On the more formal side of things, certainly it sounds like, oh, it's a club of people who do things and they have events and things like that. But the real outcome of that is camaraderie. It's friendship. It's an outcome of making sure that we can do things to improve our situations, to develop foundational knowledge, to break stereotypes, and to do things that are fundamentally better. So as an example, the employee networks helped Activision Blizzard apply for the Human Rights Campaign Corporate Equality Index. This is a US-focused benchmark that kind of rates companies on certain protections and equality and status for the LGBT plus workplace. And that includes things like workplace protections for sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression, inclusive benefits for same-sex and different sex spousal and domestic partner and medical benefits, and equal health coverage for transgender individuals without exclusion from medically necessary care. And these are topics that are challenging. They're complex, but they affect the LGBT plus community and our allies very, very deeply. So these networks help to empower and make sure that we aren't just saying things and the people within the community are only staying within the community, but we're empowering change and making sure that people understand what does it mean to be inclusive and what does it mean to feel like you are being included. And that does entail feeling like you're part of a community. So that's the general employee aspect of it, but on top of that, I get to meet so many people, and we all get to kind of understand a lot of different perspectives that we ourselves may not see or may not understand firsthand. That's the power of that human connection. So thank you.
I know, Joe, you were mentioning earlier that things from where you were sitting used to be way more grassroots than it is now. Like some of that stuff that Adrian just said is like really organized and like very kind of very structured at this point. Could you tell us a little bit about kind of where it was at when you first started kind of advocating for this sort of thing and where it is now and that process you've seen?
Yeah, absolutely. We Blizzard was an older studio, right? So there was a lot more of an old boys sort of culture, but because there were some of us who were free to be out in the company, we really wanted to kind of reach out to other people, like Adrian said, make those connections and really try and understand and help people understand that they're not alone. We started pretty, like you said, pretty grassroots. We did, just monthly lunches, Slack. Well, we didn't have Slack, but we had a mailing list and we had get-togethers to just kind of as employees together and kind of talk about how we could reach out to let people know who was who at the company and where things were going. One of the first things we did was an employee sort of fair out on in our courtyard, and we got other clubs to come out as well. It was kind of cool because our objective was to get people to know that there are other gay people around, that there are other people in the LGBT community to talk to. But it turned out to be a pretty cool thing for a lot of grassroots clubs who knew we had bronies and a hockey team and basketball team. So that was kind of fun. We actually, as we worked with Blizzard more and more, our dev team started to notice as well. And the Overwatch team approached us at one point and said, we've got this character we want to make, or we know is gay and we want to tell her coming out story, but we want to run it by some people in the community, and we've seen your efforts. So they said, can you all just kind of look at this story we're going to show and make sure it doesn't sound wrong or anything? And since then, we've been really working much more directly with things, because that kind of opened up a route to, or an avenue of communication with more of the executives. That was the Tracer coming out story that hopefully a lot of you have read and seen. And since then, we've been working much more with the executives, with the company planning. When BlizzCon, one year at BlizzCon, we got to do a lounge there. We've been doing a lounge there every year since. And then as we've integrated more with Activision Blizzard, or with Activision to become Activision Blizzard, we started talking with the other employee networks. Like Adrian's network had been doing some things and we'd been doing other things. And it's nice now that we're beginning to talk more and being able to communicate more. A couple of years ago for Pride, we wanted to kind of see if we could make our prides work together. Didn't quite work that time, but we're getting closer every year. And that's what's been really cool about it. One of the things that I think is really nice is that it's always, everything we're doing is motivated by people in the company who are excited about what they're doing. It still feels grassroots to me, even though like we actually get support, and that's really cool because we get our allies all the way from the top down. J. Allen Brack, the president of Blizzard, marched in our Pride Parade 2 years ago, and Bobby Kotick was at the Activision parade a couple years ago. So it's just been, from we're having monthly lunches and we're just talking and we don't even know who else in our company is like us, to our companies in Pride Parades and our companies on the HRC index, and we're trying to do things to positively influence our games and our world. Yeah, it's been a great journey.
That's so awesome. Thank you. I know we have like a range of experience on this panel. What have other people seen over the time that they've been in games? Like what's your, I guess, game development journey been like, and your queerness within that space been like throughout that time?
Yeah, I can go. I feel like at the last studio I was at before Sledgehammer, there weren't very many, bi or queer people on my team. And then when I came to Sledgehammer, there are other women on my team that are queer. And so it kind of put me in a position where I felt like I could be myself in a way that I like haven't at a workplace before. Like just everyday conversations with the people on my team, and then making me feel super, super accepted in anything I want to say. But yeah, being surrounded by women, especially, and especially queer women, has totally changed everything with me, especially in games, because women aren't that prevalent in games, but it's starting to change, and it's really great. But yeah, ever since I've gotten to Sledge, it's been a whole different culture, and I feel more inclined to be myself with my team and with others, like Alana. But yeah, so it's been super, super great.
That's well, in my position, that's good to hear.
I'm glad.
I was just about to say, Andy, like when she's talking about studio culture, I'm like, so Andy.
Been really terrible at Sledgehammer. Yeah, I mean, the thing I kind of add is, I think when I got into the industry, I was lucky because I did work in a smaller developer that was a bit of a boys' club, but it was also a really open and tolerant one, and it sort of set the tone for how I then kind of built my own career and how I didn't feel comfortable. And I always looked at certain other studios, and you'd see and hear about other things going on back then that made me kind of very, very glad to not be in that kind of environment. The thing that happened in the interim, which is interesting for me, is like DE&I in general, and issues in relation to LGBTQ plus in games have become much more prominent and prevalent probably over the last 5-6 years. But what I'm starting to notice is there's a lot of people that talk about it and ban a wave about it, and say all the right things, and then all of a sudden there's a story comes out of that studio, or you hear something about a different company, and that's where I kind of see a lot, like alarms and warning signs, is the job's never really going to be done. So the thing that keeps me awake at night is, what if that happens in our studio sometime? We're a large team, we're over 400 people. I'm not naive to think that in a group that large, bad cultures can develop and take root in plain sight without you necessarily seeing them. So it's about what you do in the background to try and constantly be on top of that. Because for sure, like if we were to survey our own team, I feel really good about the work we do. Alana in particular, I think you are a huge champion at our studio of DE&I and do great work for us and have pushed us forward significantly since you've joined. But how do we like if we were to survey the whole team, there would be people who probably feel pretty great about where we are as a studio and the progress that we've made. But there are probably other people who don't feel it, or other people who look at it and kind of go, oh, I'm not really seeing what you're seeing. And so that's where the focus needs to be, is making sure that the tolerance, the openness, the transparency is as widespread within our team and our culture as possible. And that when we actually feel like we're in a good place, we don't just sort of sit on it and kind of go, great, mission accomplished. Like it's got to continue. It'll change and evolve from year to year. There'll be new challenges, there'll be new perspectives coming in. And we have to kind of keep on top of all of that stuff.
What are you doing, Andy, just because you're talking and I want to ask you, what are you doing to help maintain that culture or create that positive culture and tend to it? Like you're saying, we need to. What's some of the stuff that Sledge is doing?
Well, I mean, from the top of the studio, and include obviously like Aaron, our studio head in this, because he's a huge champion, is like, there's a very, very simple thing that starts at the top, which is actually making it very widely known that you believe in these initiatives and that you will support them, and actually reiterating that point and not just making it a point in time. So like that then leads to empowerment. So you, Alana, in the initiatives that you want to push forward, you feeling like that you could come to me or Aaron or Chris Pena, who's at Kaleidoscope, our internal DE&I group within Sledgehammer. He leads that initiative, that group, and has a lot of ability to kind of put action plans in place himself. Like feeling like you can go to those people and push an idea forward that you feel passionate about and know that you're going to get a receptive audience, and then actually get help and support, whether that's through budget or logistics or pulling other people in. or pulling other groups in like Kaleidoscope to actually provide people power to get things done. Those
like having the
things are
entire
important
marketing communications team be
Yes.
supporting this panel, and have the COO here from my company having it. Yeah,
Yes.
that sort of support.
So I'll shut up in 1 second. The end cap I put on it is, I know that I'm going to be time poor at various points, and that if I make myself the center of it all, I will fail and the initiatives will fail. And I know that that's probably true for any one other person on our team as well, because we're all busy and we all have day jobs, and it's hard to keep these plates spinning. So that's where like leveraging all of those different groups that we do have within the studio is important. So we have a thing called Constellation, which is basically, we have a bunch of non-core dev, meaning not focused purely on making a video game day in, day out. We have a bunch of non-core dev teams who can be kind of force multiplied Voltron together to get a bigger end result. So we do have, our marketing and comms team internally, we have our recruitment team, we have our ops team, we have Kaleidoscope, like we have all these different groups, and they actually are able to work together so that, something like this, our Marcoms team is on this call right now. They can help promote this for us. They can help package it up and reuse it afterwards, and promote it out and use it as a tool to either hopefully help educate or start conversation somewhere else, or pull other people in. So like there's, by actually having these groups combined together, we can get a much more kind of profound end result out of it than just one or two people trying to fly the flag for D&I within the studio the whole time.
That's, yeah, like the metaphor that I've always really liked is that DEI has to be like a choir, and so long as there are a bunch of people singing, you won't notice if one person has to stop singing for a little while because they've got other things they need to do, or they're burnt out, or they're struggling. So I think that we have a really amazing choir of people singing the DEI song, I guess, in Sledgehammer, and then it became more widely, and that means that when you are really busy, you can stop singing for a little while and go and do your day job, and the song will keep going anyway. So yeah, thanks for all of that. In terms of studio culture, like we have a bunch of people here from Sledge and from other studios, from associate up to expert up to COO. Like, what are some of the things that you've seen happening in your studios that are making you feel included and making it feel like a safe space, and all of that stuff that might be similar to what Andy was just talking about, but might be things you're seeing that he's not as well?
If I'm okay to speak, just want to make sure I'm not talking over anyone there. Yeah. So I knew, like, before I started at Sledgehammer, I actually knew it was going to be quite an open place. Given that I watched the Pride stream from last year, I knew of several other people, Alana, yourself as well. I knew that you running a charity and everything based in this area. You were working here. I knew several of the people at the studio already who I'd worked with previously, who whilst weren't queer themselves, were very strong allies and would fight to the death for you. So I already knew before applying that it would be quite good there, but then starting and seeing that there's like initiatives across Activision Blizzard, even just like the bi-weekly lunches that we have at Sledgehammer in Melbourne, which is quite nice. Just a small group of similar but different people with similar experiences as well, getting to sit and chat about things. And it not feel like
the non-dude lunch that we have on a fortnightly basis. Great.
But I think this is the first place I've worked where it's a bit more obvious that there's some effort put in. I mean, I've moderated communities in the past, particularly an IRC channel many years ago, and moderation was a bit too hands off. And that, I think Andy was mentioning, if you don't like keep an eye on like any bad culture developing, it can just grow worse. And I got to see that happening when you're not actually you're not actually putting yourself forward and being like, yes, we support this, no, we do not support that, etc. If you just sort of let things slide, and it can be bad. And I sort of knew that wouldn't happen here when I joined.
I have to say, for Blizzard, Blizzard has really opened up in the D&I space since I've been here, for sure, but also in the past few years. Obviously, Overwatch being a very diverse property was something that dev team was very excited to make sure was diverse. And I think something like that comes from the fact that the culture of the company was changing and people were thinking about how to represent diversity. And Overwatch as our first new property was the first place we could see that. But even on my team, even on the World of Warcraft team, over the past few years, so much more is open and so many more people are willing to embrace people for who they are. There's been a lot of a discussion, much more discussion about how do we represent people in the game? How do we represent everyone? How do the characters in the game tell stories that everyone's familiar with? We sometimes we're trying to intentionally put more diverse stories into the game. There is a trans character in the latest expansion who's one of your sort of allies if you choose a certain route in the game. And sometimes just in being more willing to talk about things like how do we represent character creation to really let people express themselves. And all of these things I think happen because the culture at the company and the people making the game have started to, like, there's a bubble. Like if sometimes where you're used to the people you're around, and as the culture gets more open and you start to understand more about who's out there in the world and how diverse people really are, it makes you able to sort of get into the mind of someone else and to really understand how you can help them be themselves and how you can help them be seen. And so I think that this opening of the culture has really started to affect our games in such a great way.
And you mentioned Overwatch there. I don't know about everybody else here, but like when you were talking about the Tracer comic earlier and stuff, like that was one of the biggest kind of moments in, like, I wasn't at ABK then, but I remember seeing that and being like, oh man, like that's super cool. Like we've got AAA folks doing something so big and so cool.
So when the team told us in this, it was, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9 of us from who had been, meeting for lunches and stuff. And one of our senior directors in story and franchise got Chris Metzen knew and talked to him and kind of got into our network. And we were all like, this is really happening. We're like, Overwatch is going to have a gay character. This is real. I mean, it was so exciting to us as well. We were just thrilled to have it come out and thrilled to be part of the process to have them understand that they want our stories and they want it to reflect us as well. So that was, was fantastic.
Has anyone else here had moments where like either games that they're like seeing come out or playing or like studios they're working for have had like a character or a theme or something where they're like, oh man, look, like that's actually happening in games, or oh, that looks like me, or I see myself in that?
I think for me, I think when Stardew Valley came out and it was an option to basically romance anyone, like it didn't matter who you were, who they were. I think that was really big for me because it was this game where, you live a simple life. Your goal is to farm and make friends and create relationships. And the fact that I could choose no matter like what I wanted to do. I could choose to marry a girl. I could choose to marry a guy. Like it was just it was just open. And to have sort of that choice in video games was really like life-changing for me. And of course I married Abigail because she's the best.
I was gonna ask, the real question is, who do you marry?
Abigail, she's like, I mean, your first like heart event, she's like playing video games and is like, come play video games with me. I was like, oh my gosh, like I love you. But yeah, that was really big for me.
Yeah, so I think so my answer is Leah, but I also love Stardew Valley very much, so that's a winner for me as well. Is there anybody else in here who has an example or some representation?
I'd go back to like date myself again, but like something like Fable 2, because that felt bold back then. I mean, I guess that Fable 2 was probably what, 2005, 6, I don't know, but it definitely, like it felt like more of a statement, and I liked the way that the team did it because it was it felt just part of the experience. It felt like a natural part of the game. It didn't feel forced. It didn't feel like someone was trying to use it to make a statement. It felt like this is all perfectly normal and great, and I have extra player agency and choice because of it, which is a good thing. So yeah, I was surprised that it took longer to then see more, particularly within the AAA space. But I guess, yeah, progress stalls a little bit sometimes.
You started saying that and you said that you were going to date yourself, and I was like, what? And then realized you meant in age, not
No,
in a video
not like
game.
that. No.
Yeah. Anybody else have one they want to mention? Or good if not, because I did just put you on the spot with it. Why? I guess my other question then is like, what aren't you seeing and what isn't exciting you and things in games that you really want to be seeing? Like if there isn't someone who comes to mind where you're like, damn, I really related to that character, or oh, it was so cool to finally see this representation. Like what are you looking for that you aren't getting? What would be important to you?
I feel like I'm in a privileged position that I get to hopefully influence some of what we do in the future. And so it's been amazing to kind of see what's out there, and what I want to see happen, I feel like will happen.
I'd agree with that in terms of like, I feel more hopeful about the way things have been going in recent years. Like if I look at the AAA industry in particular, and even big established franchises that typically have a lot of guardrails about them for perfectly good reasons, there's more flexibility than there was before. There's more potential. Like you're seeing, like games and game teams try and kind of branch out a little bit more outside of some of those guardrails, but in ways that are actually, engaging the player base. They're not turning the player base off. They're not. I think like we talked about probably a previous, may even have been this time last year at this session, but like it extends to the makeup of our teams. Like I think if you look at even a modern AAA games team now is pretty different in its makeup to 10 years ago or so. It is more diverse from many different angles. And that to me is important because, we're making entertainment for everybody. We're not making it for like a really narrow slice of people. So if we actually want to get that big audience and have everybody playing our games, then our entertainment's got to reflect the people we're trying to sell it to. So it just makes sense. And then even the creative path through all those different opinions, those wildly different backgrounds and life journeys that everybody's had, your cultural differences. Like we as a studio are based in a bunch of different countries now, even especially more so during the pandemic, because we've hired a bunch of people who are still stuck where we hired them. So like all those different cultural perspectives, they create a sort of a pressure and a friction internally that allows us to challenge things more robustly. Whereas if we all look like me, for example, and spoke like me, or any one person from this panel, if it was very homogenous in terms of our kind of backgrounds and perspectives, then I think we'd make really samey, dull, grey entertainment, and we would not find that big audience. So I think that a lot of that has changed quite significantly over the last few years.
I have a question for you, Belinda, just as one of our writers on the team. I know you obviously can't talk about kind of what we're doing right now, but in general, like when you're talking about or like thinking about writing diverse characters and writing characters from diverse perspectives, like how much are you involving other people in that conversation, and how many people are you talking about and showing scripts to and consulting with and all of that to try and get that diverse perspective in games?
Yeah, I think the entire team is really, really great, and is always putting diversity inclusion at the forefront of everything that we do. With everything that we write or create, it's always at the forefront of our mind. I think the team ourselves are really diverse. Like I'm really proud of the team that Steven, our narrative director, has built, because it feels so different and we all have very different perspectives that we all put into, the things that we create. And we have really great communication, and we check with each other, and we also talk to people outside of our team to get their opinions and sort of their viewpoints on what we're creating, because at the end of the day, we're all a team, we're all making something together. So it's important to always have those perspectives. So we're always questioning how can we be more diverse, how can we be more inclusive, what are we missing, how do we include this kind of person, how do we include this kind of event, and we're always challenging and pushing ourselves to do that. And for that, I'm really, really, really proud to be on this narrative team, because in sort of the gaming space, a lot of narrative teams, narrative designers, writers in games, kind of all look the same and have the same perspectives. And so I'm super thankful that I am on a team that prioritizes, challenging ourselves to see different perspectives as well as each other's.
And like if you guys are consulting on identities and things, as often as I'm getting messages being like, hey, so is this idiom realistic for an Australian character, or
Yep.
this? I just get to like tell them how often to put swear words and things. Sometimes it's great. It's good fun. So yes, I am glad to see kind of the process that goes behind that creative work. There is a question that came up in chat, and it could be a question that's a little bit silly, or it could be a question that is sincere. It's hard to kind of tell, but I think it's a good question anyway. And it's literally just like, why does LGBTQ why is it a thing? Why is it an acronym we use? Why is it a thing we talk about? Why is it a thing that matters? And like, I think that's a good question, like just as a primer for people, like, why do we talk about this? Why does Pride Month exist? Why does any of this matter?
Well, we're lucky. We're free to talk about it, in all of the places we are. Like there are many parts of the world where it's not, this kind of conversation would not only be frowned upon, but there'd be someone rounding us up, right? Like, and it's a thing that it's easy to forget sometimes when we, like I live in San Francisco. I'm doing all right here, like I hope the rest of you on this call feel similarly good about where you're all based as well. But like it's all part of that job isn't done mentality. It's like if we just sort of melt away into society and never talk about these things, we risk making people feel like everything's okay the world over, and it's not. Like, and again, from countries like that are freer and more open, I feel like there's also a responsibility there to be vocal and to talk about these issues, so that we're showing other people around the world that it's okay to talk about it as well. Like, I mean, it's the kind of thing you could spend probably 2 hours answering, so I'll stop. But that I think it's really important, because not everything is equal the world over. By far the opposite, in fact. Yeah,
I'm with Andy on the I would kind of love it if we could just all just melt into the background because everything is great. It would be wonderful. I quite enjoy seeing like queer representation in media, particularly like if you watch some sci-fi shows now, you'll start seeing more queer characters and non-binary characters as well. But they're just part of the fabric of the show, and I really like that, where there's no big deal made out of them being who they are. They're not the butt of a joke or anything. They are just a part of it. It would be good to see the world progress to that kind of a state where it doesn't so much matter. But historically, there's been a lot of oppression. So now we use what privilege we are slowly gaining to actually speak openly about these things, to let others know that it is perfectly normal and fine if you are queer or whatever. Same goes for similar demographics and groups as well who are oppressed. And like you've got things like you've got Black History Month and everything as well. all of those kind of things that are because there has been an imbalance.
Yeah, I would say that the thing that I focus on the most and that matters to me the most is that everyone wants to see themselves in the entertainment they enjoy. Everyone wants to understand that they are not alone, that they are part of a bigger community. And Pride and LGBT rights and that sort of this month of celebration helps us to kind of see that there are other people, and us focusing on it lets other people who are playing our games understand that we're part of the people making up that game. We are in this game just like you are in this game, and our community together exists, and that matters. That we're not other, we're not a different thing. We are a community together. We are all humanity, and being seen in a game helps someone understand that, helps validate who you are. Ray mentioned, that it applies to a lot of different dimensions of diversity. That seeing your first female character in a game, that was important. Seeing different racial characters in games and seeing different ethnicities in games, that matters as well. And for this month, we look at LGBT matters and that we matter, and that's kind of where it is for me. I just, it celebrates community, and I want people to understand that we all see each other. We want to see ourselves in the games we make and we play.
I think until we stop getting questions like, why does it matter? Why does LGBTQ matter? Why does, Black Lives matter? Like, until those questions don't exist anymore, then like the work isn't done, right?
Yeah.
On this topic, like more specifically, you mentioned, Ray, that like you saw our Pride stream last year, and that was part of why you knew that this would be an okay place to come and work at Sledge. Like, what do you think that like what is something that you would say to people who are in a similar position this year, who are watching this and thinking about maybe coming in and working with us, and who want to know that we really care about this and that this matters to us?
I guess I'd tell them to apply. Go take a look at our careers page and apply. You're definitely not alone within Sledgehammer Games and across Activision Blizzard as well. I've been enjoying my time here now. I feel respected. I hope that's not just because I'm getting old.
I was going to say that too. They should apply.
I don't know really what to say other than, I guess, come and work for us. Yeah, like if you want to apply.
I was like, how do we inspire, queer devs who are potentially in chat? You're like, apply for a job here. Come on, guys.
Well, I think there's an opportunity, like if you are thinking, and I don't say this just for us, right? Like I think we have to be more magnanimous than just ourselves when talking about these things. Although, obviously I want lots of great applicants from diverse backgrounds, but if you look at this and you're listening to it and you kind of go, oh, it's a studio that has, and a company with ABK and Blizzard and like all of the different constituent parts of it. It's a company that is more open and is willing to push these things forward and is willing to kind of show, cultural change. Like, where you have the opportunity clearly to help drive some of that if it's something you feel passionate about. Like Alana, I know you obviously do, and there's things within the studio that you are able to do that maybe in other places you wouldn't be able to do, because either those opportunities wouldn't exist, the belief in it doesn't exist, the funding for it doesn't exist, like cut it whichever way you like. I think that, we want people who are going to be an active part of our culture and help push it forward over time as well.
And like, I think there's an opportunity as well for people who are seeing this and are like, yeah, I really wish more companies were like this, or who did this or cared about these things, to like say that, like to share this on the internet and be like, wow, look at this cool thing. I wish more companies did this thing, because that puts pressure on more companies to be like, oh, what should we be doing more of? We have another question in chat. When we're talking about why this matters, why it matters to kind of be talking about queer identities and pride, you mentioned, Eddie, that like this isn't, you know, we're not all in San Francisco or Melbourne, Australia, like I am. You know, it's not safe everywhere. Is there any issues or concerns or worries around promoting games that have diverse characters and have queer themes in those countries and those locations where queer identity is being silenced or suppressed in the community?
I don't know if it concerns, I don't know if there are concerns as such. Like, I think, you know, we want to make games that sell the world over. I think it's more like legally there are, you know, content can be censored and blocked. And obviously not just for reasons like we're talking about now, for all kinds of reasons. You know, like every country has got its own laws and its own way of implementing those laws. And so entertainment isn't outside of that, you know, like it gets caught up in it. There are many examples where, you know, that's happened and things get banned and things get censored. And sometimes you have a situation where a company will then kind of go in and hack things out that aren't going to work for one particular place and then try and, you know, come back again. But I think, like, especially with games becoming more online, more live, more kind of like 24-hour a day and more global, more cross-play, more everything, some of those issues are probably, you know, easing in some ways, and maybe there's more friction there than ever, because, you know, we are in a global industry, and it's difficult because every country is different. I mean, it's similar to the, you know, what you're saying about, you know, why is it important to keep talking about these things? It's like, well, we're all different as well. Like, yeah, I'm a gay guy, but I'm pretty different, I imagine, to lots of other gay guys. We don't all look, sound, talk, think, dress the same. So, but if we don't speak and we don't do stuff like this, there's the risk that we allow ourselves to be caricatured.
Your hair
and,
is
know,
so
like,
stereotypically beautiful, though. It's just so well manicured.
it's low resolution, badly lit. That's what it does for you.
Cool. Another question, just more broadly about queer identities. Again, like I'm just kind of looking at the chat, and some of what's coming through just is showing me that there's, you know, questions and uncertainty and ignorance and stuff still out there, which is why Pride matters, right? What is some of the ways that your queer identity impacts you and influences your life that is not like anything to do with like the literal who you are attracted to bit? Because I think there's a lot of people who are like, why do I care who you're attracted to? Stop talking about this. But like, I know that my sexuality, my identity impacts me in more than just who I date. So like, what are some of the ways that is part of your life?
I can start to answer a little bit about that. So as a contrast, when I started working at another studio back in 2009, I was closeted and I was personally not comfortable being openly gay. And I was actively doing a behavior that's often called self-censoring, where we kind of avoid topics that are related to revealing our own orientation or identity. That takes conscious effort. As an example, I invite anyone in our audience to think about what they did last weekend, but remove every pronoun from everything as they retell that story. That's a really big challenge to do. So at this part of employment, I was kind of describing what I was doing, and I accidentally failed in my self-censoring, and it revealed that I was a gay man. And after that had happened, the impact was that I felt like I had made a mistake and that I had given a part of my identity away that I wasn't ready to do so yet. And what I felt over time was that these collaborators who I had accidentally shared my identity with, I felt like I was being treated somewhat differently, like I was being excluded from things, or I wasn't quite being invited to learn in the same ways. And what that ended up telling me was that I needed to pick between whether I can be my true self or whether I wanted to succeed in a career. And this is a wrong perspective. No one should have to make that choice. And in fact, that choice is very much aligned. We should be able to succeed in who we are and be free and open about that, and also be successful in whatever career we choose to do. So as to what is the impact of how my identity has affected myself, I would say that was an example of where the ability to express oneself was very much not a luxury that was afforded to me. And I want to go back and say that it's a point of highlight here that I want to say that it's not the intention that matters. It's often the impact that is way more important. So whatever happened in this situation, it impacted me in a way that felt like I cannot be open about my sexual orientation or my identity. I have to hide that, and that's just the way it's going to be. And fast forward to when I joined Activision at Toys for Bob in 2015, when the U.S. Supreme Court decision of Obergefell v. Hodge made marriage equality the law of the nation. I was able to celebrate Pride with my husband and my company with a way that we were able to openly talk about LGBTQ plus topics and identities. And part of this was my choice to come out to my studio and my workplace. And this was probably the scariest thing I'd ever done, because no one wants to be so vulnerable to a number of strangers, let alone their workplace. And I remember being scared because I didn't know what this outcome would be. If I had revealed this identity about myself, would I be treated differently? Would people want to be friends? Or would they not want to be friends with me? Would I need to find somewhere else to work? And the reality was that this had opened up a door for myself and the people around me to be more comfortable, compassionate, and loving. So we were able to have conversations that were challenging about, like, well, what does it mean to be non-binary? I don't understand. And conversations like gender identity versus sexual orientation. Can you explain that to me? I don't get it. And that's okay. It's a learning process that we opened up that door and made sure that people can feel more comfortable, not just being themselves, but being able to ask questions and learn about the LGBTQ plus community. So as to how it affected who I am, it let me focus on making awesome games. I needed to no longer worry about self-censoring about who I was, and be able to celebrate it and wear things that I feel proud to wear and proud to do and proud to be. And I could be me. And that goes for everyone in the game industry here, that they can feel comfortable in who they are, to allow them to focus on making the great things that inspire them to be part of this family and gaming. So it was quite a journey, let me tell you. But questions like, why does it matter? I think they will persist, and it's important that we talk about it here. So that doesn't happen on its own, though. It happens through the support of people within the community. It happens through the support of people who are allies and not necessarily part of specifically and identify as a community. It also happens with the support of people who are against the community and learn that there's a better way to treat people like humans. So it's complex, but I think it boils down to love and compassion.
I was going to say, just quickly, I can summarize this one. I didn't come out while I was in the industry. I came out before, but what it does let me do is understand and be more empathetic to other people's situations. I understand, not in the same way as someone else who might have been discriminated against, but I understand how I have been, and that helps me be more compassionate and more understanding. And it really does help me ask more questions about how can I help you be more, or feel more comfortable in the games that I'm working on and in the company that I'm working with. So that, I think it has helped me. It helps me be more, that past struggle has helped me be more empathetic moving forward.
I think impact's interesting because, like, I look at it, my perspective and some other people I know who came out kind of either later on or missed a chunk of their life, you know, in terms of not being exactly who they were supposed to be. You know, like I was in my early 20s when I kind of first came out, and it's that feeling of lost time, I think, or certain just vital years when you could have just been more at peace with yourself. So like I don't know what the impact is necessarily. Like it might be there's a load of hidden impacts that we all sort of realize as the years go by. Like, did my hair turn gray early because of that? Like, I don't know. But I think yeah, like and another reason why it's important to do these kind of things is like I'd love it if we could start decreasing that proportion of people who make it as far as 2 decades before actually being able to talk about who they are and feel comfortable being who they are. I feel like the more of these things we do, like if there's a single person who watches something like this at some point and it just makes them feel that little bit bolder, then that's a win, right? Because you're helping someone.
And you just mentioned that you didn't come out into your early 20s. I came out, I think I was like 19, 20, something like that. And when I did, I thought everybody knew when they were born. I thought everyone was like, because everyone always says, oh, I've always been this way, blah, blah, blah. And so I was like, am I sure? Maybe I'm not queer. Because it's so late. And like, I went to Christian school, like I went to Catholic school for years. And so there was a lot of messy stuff in there for me. I'm sure other people have had experience with, but I think that's just one of those things that if I'd seen this stream where someone says, oh yeah, I came out in my early 20s, I'd have been like, oh, that's allowed. Oh, cool. Okay. So I think just having these conversations helps young people feel like they can be who they want to be, and anybody, like, it doesn't matter how old you are, like coming out later on. Like I know, Ray, you said that it was 10 years in the making or something when you first thought about it.
I thought the fact that I wasn't really sure, like I'd been questioning for a while. I had trans friends like in my early 20s, and then I'd sort of thought, I started thinking on it. I wasn't super certain on sexuality or anything at that point, but then I sort of started solidifying. Then as time went on, I started just realizing I'm just kind of not happy with who I am, and it's took a very long time. And it actually took meeting people who came out later in life. Like I came out at 34, so that's how long it's been going. What would have been great is if I came out before the gray hair started setting in. You can't see a lot there, but there's plenty there that I pluck out with tweezers.
Yeah, I don't have anything about gray hair. I'm just saying.
There's hair dye for that. It's fine if you really want to cover it up. Live your best gray life if you want to, but if you're not there yet, there's hair dye for that. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, like after a few years of sort of like being unsure, and then I eventually hit a point where I went out. It's too late now anyway. I'll just have to suck it up. And then later on, actually hearing stories from people who made the decision later on and went, okay, no, it's not too late, I'm going to go for it. Just sort of, I ruminated on it and went, yeah. And there's always the sort of things to think about, like, how will this affect my career? Because I'd already started becoming established. I've given talks as my prior self. There are interviews with me, prior self, etc. I'm credited on a load of games, etc. I was married. How is this going to affect things? And then when I finally realized I'd actually already accepted a job as my prior self at Sledgehammer.
I remember doing the sneaky messages to HR being like, we're aware that you need to change some things on some things, right? And they were like, yeah, good. Like, sweet.
I pinged tech director and my lead and let them know, and they were just like, okay, that's cool, like pronouns, etc., cool. Like, because I've worked with them at a previous company before, so it was like, hey, so there's going to be something different on this first day.
Yeah,
it was all good.
It's pretty cool just how quickly they were like, oh, pivot.
It was a very smooth process. Like I would say pretty friction free.
I think for me, I guess I grew up and I didn't know that being bi was an option. Like I just didn't have a lot of bi people around me, and I, knew I liked men for sure. And then I was like having all these feelings, and being attracted to women, but I was like, oh, but I like men, so I must be straight. And then it wasn't until, I sort of accepted myself just like a couple years ago and being like, yeah, I've been attracted to women for longer than I, even realized I was.
No, they were just like your really close best friends.
Yeah,
when
like
you were in
just
primary
had
school, right?
had like girl crushes on them, like
Yeah,
very
you just wanted to be
severe girl
like
crushes.
them.
Yeah.
It was about. I bully you only because I was the same.
Oh yeah, literally same. And it kind of, you're kind of mean to yourself when you're not out. You have these feelings, you find, these people attractive, you feel a certain way about things, and then you're like, wait, never mind. Am I allowed to? Am I not allowed to? And you kind of reel it back, and it's a part of you that, stays closed, where, you want to share all of you, all of yourself with your, family or friends or, even your partners. And it's like a part of you that you want to give them, but you're not sure. So, being able to like accept yourself and, accept your identity, like makes you feel like such a whole person. Like I can't explain it though. You feel whole. You feel like you don't have to hold anything back. You don't have to second guess, if you're like, oh my God, I really love, Legend of Korra and I love Korra and Asami together. Why? I see myself in them. Like that's something that you start to, find yourself that you can't enjoy the things that you enjoy freely because it, gives away a part of your identity. And so, being able to, just be yourself, love and like what or who you want to, it just makes you feel, more loved, like just in general.
What a good way to wrap all of the things up. That was such a nice sentiment. So yeah, that brings us to the end of our hour. We answered some questions in chat as they came through. If you didn't get your answer or you didn't get a chance to ask your question, feel free to ping things through to like us on social media. I know I'm aggressively available on socials. You can also ping the Sledge channel and they know who to kind of forward things through to. So like we're here, we're happy to help and ask and answer questions. It's the whole reason that we do this is because this visibility is really, really important. So does anyone have any final words that they want to end on, or do we want to leave it with that lovely optimistic sentiment from Belinda? All right. Thank you so much. It was a real pleasure to have you all here. And yeah, like I said, if you need anything, you know where to find us on the internet. So please feel free to reach out.